Good morning. We will get started in 2 more minutes. Going to let everyone finish getting in and then we will get started. Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. Thanks for joining us today for our second session of Teaching Tuesdays. Today we have the topics being presented are Pips and Stips by Amy Writings from Marin County. And then after that is going to be waivers with Casey, Choate, if I pronounce it incorrectly, from San Diego County. And then local assignment options with Monica Robinson, also from San Diego County. And then from 11 to 12 will be our Q&A session. And all three of them will be on there along with us. So again, this session's being recorded. The same link for all of the presentations from Monday to Tuesday. It's going to keep continuing. So we're going to drop those links in again if you don't have them already. Please type any questions in the Q&A. The chat is disabled and they will be again answered live from 11 to 12. And again, all sessions are recorded and links will be emailed out within a month after all the sessions are completed. So yes, they are being recorded. They will be emailed out. And then a couple disclaimers, please check with your monitoring authority regarding their requirements and always CTC as purview over granting, denying all applications submitted for review. So again, thanks for joining us. And we are going to start with Amy Writings. Go ahead, Amy. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Amy. As Amy stated, my name is Amy Writings. I'm with the Marin County Office of Education. I hope everyone can see my screen right now. If not, Amy, please let me know.
Yes, we are good, Amy.
Fantastic. All right, so we're going to get started with PIPs and STIPs. So provisional internship permits or short-term staff permits? That is the question for today. And I also want to end a little early to give you time for a short break before your next presentation. All right, so what are PIPs and STIPs? They're emergency permits that allow an individual to be in an assignment long-term. So this is someone that you need to be in the assignment past that emergency 30-day sub permit. Maybe it could be a 35-day assignment. Maybe it could be half a school year. These permits allow the person to be in the assignment and be properly assigned. But of course, you do want to check in with your monitoring authority. Now, also, I want to say make sure you have access to the SIG or the Credential Information Guide. So you can, of course, review the leaflets. Personally, from my experience, I always pull up the leaflet prior to starting one of these applications. I want to make sure that I have the most up-to-date leaflet and that nothing on that leaflet has changed since the last time that I completed an emergency permit. All right, and one important note that I just wanted to share is that quarter units have to be converted to semester units, and I've included a link to the converter that is located on the SIG. This is very important. If you submit an application with quarter units and you assume that the quarter units are in semester units, the commission is going to kick back your application with asking for the units or how you came to the unit conclusion. If you're unsure, always check the transcript key. The transcript key should say if the units are in semester or in quarter units. So absolutely use your resources. All right, so today we're going to start with PIPs or provisional internship permits. These are valid for a calendar year. So for instance, if you have the issuance date as August 15th, this permit will expire September 1st of the following school year. So before we get started on the actual requirements for the PIP, I wanted to share the definition. This definition is directly from the leaflet, but I thought it was important to share with you. So essentially, this allows an employing agency to fill an immediate staffing need by hiring an individual who has not yet met subject matter competency, needed to go into the intern program or obtain a short-term staff permit. Prior to requesting the PIP, the employing agency must verify that a diligent search has been made and that a fully credentialed teacher was unavailable. All right, and then this is a very important caveat. So if subject matter competency is met either by the bachelor's degree, a master's degree, or they have, excuse me, or they've taken the CSETs, you cannot apply for a PIP. You have to apply for a short-term staff permit for this individual. Oh, and one quick note that I wanted to mention on this is that I did include the link to the acceptable and unacceptable bachelor's degrees or master's degrees to see if someone meets subject matter competency. Please note this list is being updated, so I always recommend checking that list prior to completing an application just to be on the safe side. All right, so going into provisional internship permits. There are three types: the multiple subject, a single subject, or the education specialist. Now, before we go into detail about each kind, I do want to say that all coursework has to meet three requirements. It has to be completed at a regionally accredited college or university. If you're unsure about this, check the transcript key. That will give you the information on who their accreditation is through. And if it's not listed there, there is a link through the commission's website where you can check accreditation. Now, these courses also have to be non-remedial, meaning they have to be degree applicable for them to count. So CEU's continuing education units, those will not count. It has to be degree applicable. Now, also, the course must be earned with a C or higher. Pass and credit grades can meet this requirement if they've earned the units for them. If they haven't earned units, the commission will not accept these courses. All right, so let's start with a multiple subject and how one is able to qualify for the multiple subject PIP. So one needs at least 40 semester units, including 10 semester units of coursework in the 4 of the categories. Excuse me. Or at least 10 semester units of coursework in 3 of the subject areas and an additional 10 semester units in accommodation of 2 of the remaining subject areas. So what are the subject areas? They include language studies, history, literature, humanities, mathematics, arts, science, physical education, social science, and human development. Now, moving on to single subject. So for single subject PIPs, the applicant has to have at least 18 semester units or 9 upper division semester units of coursework in the subject to be listed on the permit. Now, for science permits, it's a little bit different. So for one of the science subject areas, there has to be at least 9 semester units in the specific science area. And for foundational level general science, an individual has to verify 18 semester units or 9 upper division units across the 4 science areas. And those are biological science, chemistry, geosciences, and then also physics. And then a minimum of 1 course in each of these areas is required for the PIP. Now, moving on to special education. So there are 4 areas of specialization that you can apply for with a education specialist PIP. And they are mild to moderate support needs, extensive support needs, deaf and hard of hearing, and then visual impairment. Now, it's important to note the PIP cannot be issued in early childhood special education or ECSE alone, as subject matter competency is not required for the issuance of that credential. Now, For special ed, there are a couple different or a few different ways to meet the requirement to earn the PIP in education specialist. So one can meet the requirements for the single subject or multiple subjects, or they can verify a minimum of 3 years of successful full-time classroom experience or the equivalent in part-time experience working with special education students. And being an aide is absolutely acceptable, but the letter from the employer needs to be on the employer's letterhead. You need to have the specific dates, what their role was, and then also the letter needs to either be signed in blue ink and that letter is mailed to the applicant, or it has to be one of the approved electronic signatures, and that's either DocuSign or Adobe Sign. Now, please note, if you have a copy of a signature on this letter, the commission will kick back this application. And then that individual or applicant will have to obtain a new letter and send that in to CTC to respond to the CTC reject letter. All right. The next piece I want to touch base with are the evaluation worksheets. So there are 3 evaluation worksheets, one for each area, and I highly recommend using these. These will absolutely help in determining what someone qualifies for. So the multiple subject leaflet number is CL 860, the single subject is 862, and the education specialist one is 864. These are all located on the SIG under leaflets and form, and I believe the header is resources. So please make sure to use these. And I will state, when I first started working, how I was trained was you start with the waiver evaluation worksheet and then move up. But for me personally, I found that as soon as someone qualified for the waiver, I would essentially stop that evaluation. And so after I realized that after the second time, I then now start with either the PIP or the STIP evaluation worksheet. And essentially, I list all the classes that I see would qualify. And then after I do that evaluation, then look at and see what that person actually qualifies for. Can I qualify them for a PIP? Or do we need to go down to the waiver? And the district and I work on that application together. So this is just a little tip that I've learned with my 8 years of being in this role. And I just want to say, I do apologize. I'm getting over a bug. So if I cough or sneeze, I do apologize in advance. All right, so now the application packet. So as we know, there's a 41-4. However, that is online now. So if you need access to submit 41-4s, or depending on how your monitoring authority submits the application, make sure to work with them if your district is submitting applications, or if the county is submitting applications on your behalf, make sure to absolutely work with them. I'll say this again towards the end, but we essentially are a team and we want to be here to support you and help you. So the application packet. So for a PIP, in addition to meeting the competency requirements, the applicant also needs a bachelor's degree from a regionally accredited institution. They must meet the basic skills requirement. So for instance, that can be met with the CBEST, qualifying SAT or ACT scores, or a coursework evaluation, or a combination of 2 of those items. So you absolutely want to double check that basic skills has been met. Typically in my role, prior to even looking at the coursework and seeing if they qualify for an emergency permit, I will double check with my district to make sure that that person meets basic skills. Because if that applicant does not meet basic skills, then that person needs to go take the CBEST, essentially ASAP, so that way we know we can qualify them. In addition, they need to meet the requirements for the specific subject area, which we just discussed. And then they need to do the verification of requirements form and a copy of the agenda or public notice. So with the verification requirements form, and I've included the leaflet number on this slide, so that way you can pull that up on the SIG. The employing agency is essentially verifying that recruitment was completed. I tell my districts to keep the recruitment documentation in the employee's file, just in case there's an outside review or they're monitored. That way they have that information. And for the recruitment piece, so the district must have distributed job announcements. They must have or show that they've contacted college or university placement centers. Essentially, an email to the IHE is acceptable. That's what my districts and I have used in the past. And typically, districts are reaching out to IHEs either around this time or at the beginning of the school year, or they might do both. So that way they can show that they have reached out to the universities looking for people who are eligible for intern credentials. And then you also need to advertise on the internet. So this could be EdJoin, this could be Handshake. It just depends what you use as an employing district. For the distributed job announcements, for instance, at my county, we basically have a wall with various flyers of job announcements. And so that's what we include in our application packet. Now, in addition, with the agenda or public notice, this is crucial. Without this, this application will not be granted. So if you're a public school district, you have to show that this was an action item on the governing board agenda, and it was also acted upon favorably and approved. So the agenda item needs to include the applicant's name, the assignments, including subjects or subject, the grade level or levels, the school site, and basically a small sentence stating that the applicant will be employed on a basis of the PIP. If you, and I cannot stress this enough, if you do not put this on as an action item, if this is a consent item, the commission will kick back this application, and then this needs to go to the board again as an action item. And I know I don't have a lot of wording on my slides, but all this information is on the leaflets. It's also listed on the verification requirements form. I believe it's listed on the second page. Now, if you are a county office of education, if you're a non-public school, a statewide agency, or a charter school, essentially you're doing a public notice. So that public notice has to be posted at least 72 hours before you fill the position. And you also have to include a copy of the dated notice with the application packet. So previously, we were mailing these applications. Now this is a document that you upload. And I will be going over the online application towards the end of this presentation. Now, the public notice has to include the applicant's name, the assignment. You also need to include the subject or subjects, the grade level or levels, the school site, and basically a statement that the applicant will be employed on the basis of the PIP. So for us here, we post our notices at the front of the building and then also on the side of the building at basically all of our doors where one can enter. So that way it is shared with the public, and then we just include one of those notices with the application packet. All right, and then also you do need a signed statement from either the superintendent or an administrator confirming that there were no objections to applying for this permit. I do apologize. Like I said, I'm getting over a bug, so bear with me, please. So make sure you include a signature from the superintendent. Here at this county, we've always gone to the superintendent for the signature, just stating that there were no objections to this assignment. If there are objections, then that is on as the employer, your protocol on how you would handle that next. Now, this form also states, and I just want to pull or point out some important pieces of this form. So, according to the verification requirements form, the holder will be provided assistance in developing a personalized plan through that will lead to meeting subject matter competency related to the permit. So that could potentially be a conversation. Here in this county, we actually have a form that the directors of personnel utilize when they meet with someone on an emergency permit, and they go over subject matter competency and any other requirements that need to be met either to bump up to another permit or to earn their preliminary or even an intern credential. In addition, by the district or employing agency assigning this form, you do say that the permit holder will be provided assistance to seek and enroll in subject matter training. So this could be workshops, this could be, classes on test taking strategies, whatever the case may be. But you are basically saying that you're going to be supporting this employee in their process and earning the credential. And then also you do need to have a conversation with them that your employee is aware of the steps required to earn the credential and also become intern eligible or enroll in an intern program. That's imperative because the commission wants to see these people succeed. We as employers want to see these folks succeed. So you want to make sure they have a clear path on what they need to do in order to earn that preliminary. Now, I know I mentioned this before, but this form has to be signed in blue ink or Adobe Sign or DocuSign. And the employing individual has to be either the district or county superintendent, a personnel administrator, so director of personnel, the NPS or NPA administrator, or a designee. It cannot be signed by an admin, or by admin, I mean an administrative secretary or assistant. It has to be signed by someone who's towards the top, essentially, for this permit to be considered. Now, if you have like an HR specialist or an HR tech sign this form, the commission will kick it back. So I highly recommend having your superintendent or your director of personnel or HR sign this form. And again, make sure it's in blue ink, or it's Adobe Sign or DocuSign, so that way the commission accepts it and does not kick back your application. All right, so now we're going to switch to short-term staff permits. Now, short-term staff permits are valid for a school year, whereas, like I said, PIPs are valid for a calendar year. So by STPs being valid for a school year, they will expire. Typically, it's at the end of June. I have my districts put the expiration date June 30th. That's typically when they end. However, if you're on a different track, you can request a little bit more time. You just need to write a brief memo stating why you need that additional time. And again, that should be on letterhead and then also signed either in blue ink. And I'm going to stress this through the whole presentation, either in blue ink or Adobe Sign or DocuSign. All right, so I included the definition from the leaflet. I figured that was a very important information to have. So essentially, a short-term staff permit allows an employing agency to fill an acute staffing need when you have not been able to find a fully credentialed teacher. All right, so we have three types again. It's the multiple subject, single subject, and education specialist. Now, I want to stress again, I know I mentioned this at the beginning of the session, but if they've passed the CSETs, you cannot apply for the PIP. You have to go the STIP route. So always double check when you're working with your districts, if you're a county office. For me personally, one of my first questions that I ask the district if they're interested in hiring someone is, has this person taken the CBEST and have they passed any of the CSETs? Because that's really going to tell you which route you can go. So again, all coursework for any of these permits has to be from a regionally accredited college or university. If you're receiving transcripts from a university you have not heard from or heard about previously, check the key. See what they say is who their accreditation agency is. That should be listed on the key. And if you're still unsure, the commission does offer a webpage that has links to the various accreditation agencies where you can actually go to that website and do a quick search to see if that school is listed. Again, the coursework must be bachelor degree applicable. It cannot be non-remedial. Again, CEUs, continuing education units, those do not count towards the permit as they are not applicable to the bachelor's degree. And then your coursework or the applicant's coursework has to be earned with a C grade or higher, and you can use pass or credit grades as long as they're earning the units for those grades. I know in my last 8 years, I've had some that have earned the units and some that have not received any units for the pass or credit grade. So you really just have to check those transcripts. And honestly, experience makes perfection. So with you, if you're new to this, it could be frustrating, it could be overwhelming, but just keep at it because soon it will be second nature to you. All right. So for a multiple subject short-term staff permit, so the person either needs to hold a degree, major in liberal studies, and there's actually a few others listed on that website that's linked earlier in the presentation, or they have to have 40 semester units, which includes 10 semester units of coursework in at least 4 of the subject areas. And I'll re-review the subject areas as well. This is also listed on the evaluation worksheet. And again, I typically start with the STIP or PIP evaluation worksheet when I'm reviewing transcripts with districts, just to see what someone does or does not qualify for. Now, if they don't have 10 semester units in 4 of the categories, what you can do, similar to the PIP, is you can do 10 semester units of coursework in 3 of the categories, and then for that additional 10 semester units, you can do a combo of 2 of the remaining subject areas. And it doesn't have to be split 50-50. You could do maybe 2 units in one category and 8 units in another. I know that technically does not make sense since classes are typically 3 and 4, but you get the picture. It does not have to be split evenly. You really just need to make those 10 semester units. Now, again, if the transcripts are in quarter units, you have to calculate and basically convert them to semester. So off the top of my head, about 4 quarter units is almost 2 semester units, but it's a little bit less. So always double check that they do have the requirement in semester units and not quarter units. And then again, the subject areas include language studies, history, literature, humanities, math, arts, science, PE or physical education, social science, and human development. So your psych classes, anthropology classes, child development classes, these can all be utilized for the emergency permits. Now, for single subject STIPs, one has to have a degree major in the subject area or at least 18 semester units or 9 upper division semester units of coursework in the subject to be listed on the permit. Now, for the sciences, I wanted to note that for a STIP in one of the science subject areas, at least 9 semester units must be in the specific science area that you're requesting. So if you're going for biology or biological sciences, you need at least 9 semester units in that section, and then the remaining units can be in other sciences. For foundational level general science, there are 2 options. First is to verify a bachelor's degree or higher in science, and this can be biological science, chemistry, geoscience, physics, and science areas that also fall within the broad categories such as earth science, oceanography. Again, I do apologize, I'm getting over a bug, but it's important to note that this does not include health science. Health science would qualify for a STIP in health. Now, the second option is to verify 18 semester units or 9 upper division units across the 4 science areas. And then you have to have a minimum of 1 course in each of the 4 areas. So that's that requirement. As I'm sure you've seen, it's very rare. Anyways, it's rare in this county that someone has science classes in all of the 4 areas. Typically, they specialize in 1 or 2 areas. So it might be taking a look at the course and seeing if another science area will qualify for them to teach that class. Now, for special education, there are 5 areas of specialization that an employment agency can apply for. One is mild to moderate support needs, extensive support needs, visual impairments, deaf and hard of hearing, and early childhood special education, or ECSE. Now, to qualify for a STIP in special education or education specialist, the applicant has to complete the requirements for the single subject or multiple subject that we just discussed. Another option is if you're going the single subject route, you can use assumed classes like sociology or anthropology to meet the requirement On the form, on the evaluation worksheet, there is an area for coursework evaluation that you can include the sociology or anthropology. For instance, in this county, I have been able to qualify numerous people just based on their sociology units, which greatly helps us. Now, another option to qualify for a short-term staff permit is the applicant has to verify a minimum of 3 years of successful full-time classroom experience or the equivalent in part-time experience working with special education students. Again, experience as an aide is acceptable. And the memo does need to be on letterhead with an original blue ink signature or Adobe Sign or DocuSign. And I know I'm stressing the blue ink, but from my many years of experience, I have one time sent in an application where the individual signed in black ink. That application was kicked back and we had to redo the application and resend it in with a blue ink signature. So as I tell my applicants who come into this office, if we need to do a paper app, I always say, please use blue ink. Or you can use one of the other colors, green, orange, but it just cannot be black ink. The commission has to be able to tell that it's not a copy. And unfortunately, with black ink, it can look like a copy, even if you know that you have the copy in your files. All right, now another option to qualify is a minimum of 9 semester units of coursework in SPED, or a combination of special education and general education. This option has also come in handy. I know I've been able to qualify a few people just based on the coursework and mixing and matching the special education coursework with the general education coursework. All right. So similar to PIPS, we have evaluation worksheets for each of the multiple subject, single subject, and education specialist. So I've included their leaflet numbers. That way you can pull them up on the SIG. Please use them. These are extremely helpful. In addition, it also helps CTC see what classes you thought met the requirement. And I highly recommend always including this in the application packet. Always upload this. All right. Now the application packet includes the bachelor's degree, basic skills requirement. The person needs to meet the requirements for the specific subject area and the verification of requirements form. Now also, if they've already held a sub permit, the commission has advised that we still include the bachelor's transcripts and the basic skills requirement again, just to make things easier on those processing the applications. So that is highly recommended. For the verification of requirements form, you're going to choose an end date for this application that CTC is going to either key in if you do have to send a paper app. Not everyone has access to submit online, or you're going to upload this on the form, on the verification of requirements form into the online portal when you submit online. Now, you do have to select a justification for the acute staffing need. And there are 5 options. Oh, I'm so sorry. So actually there are 6 options, excuse me. No, I'm sorry, there are 5 options. So the individual needs additional time to complete pre-service requirements for enrollment in a commission approved intern program. Enrollment adjustments require the addition of another teacher, or the individual is unable to enroll in a commission approved intern program due to timelines, lack of space in the program, or needs to complete the subject matter. The other option is unavailability of a 3rd-year extension, or they withdrew from an intern program, or the teacher of record is unable to finish the school year due to approved leave or illness. So you do, as the employing agency, have to select one of these options as your justification for the short-term staff permit. And one of these options will meet the acute staffing need. And again, this form has to be signed by your superintendent, a personnel administrator. If you're a non-public school, one of those administrators or designee. Has to be a blue ink signature or Adobe Sign or DocuSign. The commission will not accept anything less. All right, and I see we have about 6 minutes left. So real quick, I want to switch to the online portal and online applications. So as you can see, I created a profile for myself. And so I just wanted to show you where you go to submit online applications. So you go, once you log in, you're going to the application tab, and then you're clicking on authorized agencies. Once there, you're going to go, so sorry, switch slides. You're going to go to create document. And then after that, it takes you to this page. So you are filling in the issuance date, the document title. You're going to click the little search box to find the appropriate document title. You're also going to add your county of employment. After you do that, you click save. And then you go to authorization or subject areas. You're going to click on the new button, and then you're going to add the appropriate authorization. And then after you do that, you go to renewal requirements. You're going to click new. You're going to add the appropriate renewal requirements, click save again, and then you're going to the employment restrictions. So if this is for a school district, you need to make sure the school district is listed. If it's for the county office, then the county office would be listed. And then I typically always review the information, make sure everything's listed, make sure nothing's forgotten, and then click next. After you click next, you are essentially uploading the documents for the supporting application. So that includes transcripts, basic skills, your verification of requirements form, your transcript evaluation worksheet, everything you need to show that this person and that the employer has met the requirements. This is a PIP. You're uploading the agenda item or the public notice. And then after you add the attachments and then click next, it's going to take you to basically a summary page. There again, I do a review real quick, making sure everything's there. I actually save that page before I submit the application because I want proof of what I submitted. All right. And so this is basically the last slide of my presentation, and we have 4 minutes left. So I do apologize. I wanted to end 5 minutes early, but I just wanted to share with you that there is an application checklist on the SIG. It's leaflet 866. If you're brand new to credentialing, feel free to use that. It will basically outline what's required for each application for the PIPs and the STIPs. And also networking. That is imperative. You need to create your network. If you're a district, please work with your county office. They want to see you succeed. And I've always had the opinion here in this county that we're a team, we're in this together. And I'm here to assist all my districts, my NPSs, and then also private schools as well, even though they don't require a credential. But networking is huge, and knowing that you're not alone in this field will make it a lot easier. So if you have questions, reach out. No question is ever dumb. This is a very specific knowledge that one has to have, and essentially we learn on the job. Some of us have to learn relatively quickly, so always feel free to reach out. We're here for you, and I hope you've enjoyed the session, and then I will see you back in the Q&A portion.
Thank you so much, Amy. So we'll go ahead and take a like 3 minute break, 3 to 5 minute break. We'll let Casey pull up her waivers presentation, and then we'll get started in about 3 to 5 minutes. Thank you, Amy. Okay, so our next presentation is on waivers by Casey Choate from San Diego County. Thank you, Casey, for joining us today. I'll let you take over.
All right. Thank you, Amy. And yes, you did pronounce my last name, so thank you.
Yay.
So I'm Casey Choate. I'm the manager for the Credentials and Live Scan Services Department here at the San Diego County Office of Education. And we are going to be talking about credential waivers today. So let's go ahead and get started. All right. So let's start with, when are you going to actually use a waiver? When are you going to use a waiver, and what can be waived? So you only want to use a waiver when there is no fully credentialed individual available, or the applicant does not currently meet the requirements for a higher document, such as a PIP or a STIP. So what can be waived? There's primarily 3 different areas that you can actually waive. That's the program, experience, or basic skills. So when I say program, I'm talking about, somebody hasn't had time to enroll in a program, or maybe they haven't met all the requirements yet for a specific subject matter, so they need to take a couple more classes. And then in terms of experience, typically we see that when it is somebody that is trying to get an administrative credential and maybe they don't have all of the teaching experience yet. And then the BSR is basically somebody who, there's a lot of different requirements, or excuse me, a lot of options now for basic skills. I think there's 8 now different ways of meeting the basic skills requirement. But let's say they don't meet that requirement, then they can also do a waiver. Typically, this happens, I see this a lot in San Diego, where somebody came in from another state. They did not have a basic skills requirement with their credential. And their requirement, the newer requirement, was that they needed to complete basic skills within 1 year. Sometimes they just can't. Something happens, they cannot meet the basic skills requirement within that year. So sometimes we will see people going on to a waiver for just the basic skills, even if they already hold a valid credential. So I'm going to talk today about 2 different types of waiver types. So there's the primary one that we use a lot, which is called the variable term waiver. And this is what I like to call the last resort. And then I'm also going to talk about the short-term waiver, which is a local level option for people. So for the variable term waiver, it allows the LEAs, the local educational agencies, to have a little bit more time to fill an assignment. So for example, you absolutely have to fill this position. This is the only candidate that you can find at this time. It gives you an opportunity to hire that person, put them in the assignment, and then you can be looking for somebody with the full credential while they're in that position. The other option is the short-term waiver, which is where that situation where it's like, oh no, so-and-so has left, we do not have a position, or we don't have anybody to cover that position, but we do have a fully qualified teacher with the wrong credential, and we want to go ahead and put them in that assignment for a very short period of time. It has to be a 1 semester or less. So I'll go into each of these different areas or different types of credentials or waivers today. All right, so let's start with the variable term waiver. Again, I use the term last resort because what you need to understand is that this is not your first choice. You need to make sure that you've tried all the other credentials or options before this, and then this is the last option for you. So this is where you cannot find a fully credentialed teacher. Maybe you're in a remote location, just can't find a fully qualified teacher, and you need to put somebody in that classroom because those kids need a teacher. So this would be a good option to use the variable term waiver. Again, you put them in that position, but you are looking for a fully credentialed teacher during that time. That's really what this is about. This is what it's for. Or it may be that you have a great candidate, but maybe they're just missing something specific to get that next level up. So it gives you a little bit of extra time to meet the requirements, to meet the eligibility for that emergency permit or even a full credential. Now, and we see this a lot too, if the BSR basic skills requirement is not met, or the educator hasn't had enough time to qualify for the specific units for the PIP or the STIP, which Amy just went over, a waiver might be an option for you. So there's a couple things that are absolutely required by the employer. So these are primarily the 4 things that are required no matter what. It's going to be the governing board approval or a public notice, which I'll go over those in just a minute. You have to recruit for that position. You can't just say, oh, I love this guy, let me just put them in the position. You must prove that you actually recruited for that position in any of the low incidence areas, which I will tell you what those are in just a second. It is restricted to the employer, so it is only restricted to whoever applies for that waiver. You can't then have that person go to another location without actually changing that waiver to the new employer. And then it is renewable, but you have to show progress over that year. So let me talk about what the difference is between board approval versus public notice. So board approval is basically for everybody except for I'll start it with the other one, the public notice. Public notice is actually for County Office of Education or non-public schools. Everybody else must do the board approval. For those that are doing the public notice, the county offices and the non-public, that what they have to do is they have to put up a posting on a window where it's in the public area. It has to be up for 72 hours in that public place. And then you can take it down at that point, but you would have to then submit it to the commission showing that you actually provided or that you put up this document. Now, in terms of the high incidence versus low incidence, high incidence areas they don't have as many requirements because they realize that these are hard to fill positions. Typically, this is your special ed, your SLPs, and driver ed, which we don't see very often anymore. And a low incidence area would be other things like admin, single subject, multiple subject, and EL. So when it's considered a low incidence, there are a little bit more requirements that are needed for the application. All right, when not to waive. It's one of those interesting things, like I'll have a county, or excuse me, a district will come to me and say, okay, so I want to start with a waiver, and then I'm going to go to the PIP, and then I'm going to go to the STIP. It doesn't quite work that way. So if you were to apply for a waiver and they actually qualify for a STIP or a PIP, it will get rejected and the commission will take the fee. So you really don't want to try or start with a waiver. You always want to start with a STIP or a PIP. And then if they don't qualify for that, then look at the waiver as an option. Another way, you do not want to use a waiver when somebody has failed to complete the renewal requirements for a permit or a credential. Let's say they just decided not to do it, or they kept taking and could not pass the test. You cannot move down to a waiver just because of the failure of tests. Or if they've held a previous credential and now they want to come back and they haven't done anything, so they think, oh, I'll get on a waiver. It doesn't work that way. So you cannot use a waiver for that. And then also this, I don't know if you've heard this term, but it's called the credential ladder. You cannot step down the credential ladder. And I'll tell you exactly what that is, what we like to call the ladder. So what this is basically you want to always look for that full teaching credential first. That is your number one choice on hiring somebody new. Then you move to the emergency permits. Then you can move down to an internship, then a PIP, then a STIP. And as you see, it got really little. The waiver is really your last resort. And if they qualify for anything higher up on that ladder, they will not get a waiver. It will be denied. So now I want to kind of go over some of the specific types of waivers. So let's start with BSR. Now, it's interesting with all the legislation that's happening right now around BSR. We're still talking about it, but there is a possibility that there may be some changes coming up with basic skills. But at this time, we are still looking for, we will, if somebody doesn't meet the requirement for basic skills, they can do a waiver. And it does talk here about the initial reasons as to why you would need a BSR waiver. So maybe they just haven't had an opportunity to take that basic skills, or you've reviewed all of their coursework and you've reviewed all the different things that they need to get or to see if they qualify for the basic skills, and they don't meet it. They don't meet the requirement. Maybe they never took a reading class, or maybe they never took a math class. It's unlikely, but you never know. Or the applicant has attempted the CBEST, but it has not passed all sections. Now, there's a very specific part of this. Now, for people who are applying for math or science waivers, the applicant has to have attempted the math section of the basic skills test, and a passing score must have been achieved. They figure if you can't pass the CBEST in math or science, probably should not be qualified to be teaching it. And then the same thing with the English waivers. If the applicant they have to have attempted the reading and writing sections of the CBEST, and a passing score must have been achieved. Now, if none of the sections have been met, there will be a statement on the document that says they must take the CBEST at least twice during that year that this document is valid and obtain a passing score of 41 in one of the sections, or they must complete an acceptable reading, writing, or math course at a local university. So that if they don't do this, they will not qualify for a subsequent waiver. It's really important that they understand that if they're going to be on this, they must meet these requirements. All right, so let's talk about a single subject waiver. So the way that I think about this is, okay, what is it that somebody needs for a short-term staff permit? And if they don't meet that requirement, then this is the next step down. A short-term staff permit for single subject requires 18 units in that subject. So if you notice, the eligibility for a waiver in single subject for a single subject is a minimum of 12 semester units of coursework in the subject to be listed. So you're not quite there. You have 6 units under what the STIP is required. Now, if they have the full 18, you're going to go for that STIP. But if they don't, you do have at least a minimum of 12 semester units in the subject to be on the waiver. And they're very specific about the sciences. So for science, you must have 12 semester units in science with at least 9 units in the specific area that you're requesting, plus an additional 3 units in any of the other science areas. So for example, if you want a biology waiver, you have to have at least 9 units in biology, and then the other 3 units can be in any other science area. Now, if they want the lower level science, which is the foundational level science, they do need 12 semester units, a minimum of 1 course in each of the 4 areas. So they have to have 1 class in biology, 1 in chemistry, 1 geoscience, and 1 in physics. So that is an absolute requirement if they are going to be doing the foundation level general science. And then, of course, they must have a bachelor's degree or higher and the basic skills requirement. All right, so I'm going to show you the waiver hand or worksheet. So this is the worksheet that you can find online. It actually talks in detail about specifically what the requirements are. So you can see on there, it does say for a waiver in math, it says at least 12 semester units in math. And you can do one of these 2 things here. You can do a degree major in the subject area. And that doesn't, if you do have a degree major, you don't actually have to go in and look at all those units. The degree major automatically qualifies them for that area. And then the coursework evaluation, or you could do the coursework evaluation. And so you can see here that the same 3 requirements that are required for a STIP or a PIP, it's the same for a waiver, must be from a regionally accredited college or university. And then if the bachelor's degree must be degree applicable or non-remedial. and it must be earned with a C or higher. And when we say C or higher, that literally means they can have a C. It's okay, but it has to be a C, B, or an A. But you also can use a pass or a credit. In the Commission's eyes, a pass or a credit is also considered a C or better. All right, so let's move on to the multiple subject credential, or excuse me, the multiple subject waiver. So again, what in my mind, when I look at this, I think, okay, well, what's required for the short-term staff permit for a multiple subject? So the short-term staff requires 40 units total. But if you look here, you can see that it says a minimum of 8 semester units of coursework in at least 4 of the subject areas listed here. So if you do your math, 8 times 4, 32. Basically, minimum is 32 semester units for the waiver. And if you were to do a full STIP, it'd be 40. So you're looking for 8 units in at least 4 of these areas. So you can look at, you have a couple units in language studies, you can have a couple units in science, history, but you have to have at least 4 of these different areas, and there has to be 8 semester units in each of those areas. Again, a bachelor's degree is required, and then the basic skills. So let's look at that. Let's look at the worksheet for that one. So here's the evaluation worksheet. Now I did condense it so it would fit on one page, but you can see here that they've listed out all of the different areas that you can actually use. And you can see the quarter versus the semester. And as Amy was mentioning, there is a difference between the two. When they're looking for units, they specifically are talking about semester units. So if your applicant has quarter units, if it's 4 quarter units, it's usually equivalent to 3 semester units. So there is a conversion chart on the SIG, so you definitely want to check that out. So what you're going to be looking for on this worksheet is you're going to be looking for 4 different areas that they may have the classes. So you can see it's also listed some of the other areas that might fall under the subject area. So look at social science. It can be a class in history, it can be government, geography, economics, political science, sociology, anthropology, psychology. So most people who've gone through a bachelor's program have at least a couple units in social science, but you never know. So you want to be looking at their transcripts, verifying that they have at least 8 units in in 4 of these areas. All right. So let's talk about ed specialists, special education. So if I was to look at the STIP for the ed specialist, the minimum requirement is that they have to have either 3 units of experience, or 3 years of experience, or 9 semester units. So let's look at the requirements for the waiver. The requirements for the waiver is 2 years of full-time experience working with students with exceptional needs. Now that can be an aide, a TA, it can be anything where you are actually working with students with exceptional needs. So 2 years of experience or the equivalent of 2 years. So it can be part-time, you can do, I think there's even some requirements that says you could do several summers. The commission kind of goes into detail about what's allowed. Now you also, now these are ORs. So it's 2 years of full-time experience or a minimum of 6 semester units of coursework in special education or a combo of special ed and regular ed. So let's think about that for a minute. 6 semester units, 2 classes, right? That's only 2 classes. If you have 1 special ed class and 1 general ed class, that meets the requirements for an ed specialist waiver. And then the other options are you can meet the coursework requirement for a multiple subject waiver or even a single subject waiver. So if you met the qualifications for multiple or single, you will automatically qualify for the ed specialist. And then again, of course, the bachelor's degree and the basic skills. So let's look at the worksheet for that one. All right, so here it's listed out. So you have to identify what's your degree major. Then you have to identify the area of specialization. So are you looking for mild, moderate severe, DHH? What are the different areas that you're looking for in for the waiver? And then how are you meeting the requirement? There's 4 different options there that we just talked about. So the 2 years of experience, a minimum of 6 units, or that you met the requirements for the multiple subject, or you met the requirements for the single subject. All right. The next one we're going to talk about is admin services. So the admin services eligibility, they have to, a minimum, have the bachelor's degree and basic skills, and then they need to enroll in a program, or they have to prove or identify that they are intending on completing the CPACE exam, which is California's administrator exam. They do also have to hold a clear prerequisite credential. So if they do not have a clear prerequisite credential, and that could be a single, multiple, or ed specialist, they don't have that prerequisite credential, then they don't qualify for a waiver. And then they have to have at least 4 years of experience. So this is typically what we see when somebody's applying for an admin waiver. It's because they only have 3 years or 4 years of experience, but the full admin credential requires 5 years of experience. So typically when you're doing a waiver, it's because you're missing that 1 year of experience. Now, it is kind of interesting. The commission does say that if you have somebody who's been working as, let's say they were working as a summer school teacher, that they actually can use that summer school experience, but it would have to be 4 summers, would be equivalent to 1 year of experience. So it is interesting because there's a lot of different options on meeting that requirement. The full admin credential requires the 5. So if they don't meet that, they could potentially qualify for this waiver if they have at least 4 years of experience. Now that prerequisite credential can be a PPS, it can be a librarianship, it can be a health services, a clinical rehab, or it can be teaching and services. There's a lot of different options for the waiver for admin. Now, there is no waiver leaflet, or excuse me, not the leaflet, the worksheet. So I would show it to you, but I couldn't find one. So I'm going to move on to the next one. All right, the next one, and this is one we see a lot in San Diego. So this is what we call the waiver of the CCSD, which stands for the Certificate of Completion of Staff Development. And basically what that means is that it's the EL authorization primarily used for people who hold a CTE, or a designated subjects credential. For those of you who don't know, a CTE credential, when you first get it, it's a 3-year document. And during the 3 years, they do not include EL as part of the program, but you actually complete the EL portion throughout those 3 years. So in the meantime, you are required to apply for a waiver to allow you to go ahead and serve EL students in a CTE classroom. One of the things that we see that becomes kind of an issue in San Diego is if you don't pay attention to the expiration dates of your documents, you will end up having your waivers expire early. So for example, if you have a CTE credential that's going to expire in, let's say, February, you apply for the waiver at the beginning of the school year. You think that you're going to go all the way to the end of the school year because the person's going to renew their credential during that time, but no. The waiver actually aligns with the other document. So if their document expires in February or March, then your waiver will also expire in February or March. We've seen it where somebody only gets a document for 3 months, 4 months, and then they have to apply for a renewal. So it's really important that you're paying attention to those expiration dates on your document, because the waiver will expire whenever the basic credential expires. All right, so let's talk about the bilingual waiver. This is another one that we see a lot in San Diego. So for somebody who actually has a preliminary credential or a clear credential, they can get a bilingual waiver one time only. So why would you need a bilingual waiver? When would you need that? basically they have not met the requirements for the emergency B-clad. Now, the emergency B-clad requires that they have to have the target language proficiency. So, obviously you have somebody who's going to be in a bilingual classroom. You want to make sure that they know what they're talking about in the foreign language. So they have to meet either the CSET exam, or they're going to do an assessment through one of the universities, but maybe they hadn't had time to do that yet. But you need this person in the classroom now. So you can put them on a bilingual waiver, excuse me, as long as they've met the other requirements, which is the bachelor's degree, basic skills, and all that, which they should have done anyway because their basic credential would have already had that. Now, if they hold a PIP or a STIP or even an intern, they can also get a bilingual waiver. Now, we do see it sometimes where somebody's in an intern program and that particular program does not also offer a bilingual program. So they cannot add it to their intern credential. So that's where they would need to do the waiver instead. And then for subsequent waivers, the applicant must make progress toward the full bilingual authorization by coursework or exam. And then once they meet the requirement for the full emergency B-clad, which is primarily that target language, then they have to switch to the emergency B-clad instead. All right. So there's a lot of other waivers out there, and I don't want to go into every one, but I just wanted to show you that there are a lot of other types of waivers that are out there. Right now, if you're struggling to get a substitute and they don't meet the requirements for basic skills, something like that, well, that whole thing expires June 30th, but starting July 1st, if basic skills comes back, maybe they don't meet the requirement. You would do a waiver for that 30-day sub. Or you need somebody who's going to do adapted PE. You need a clinical rehab person. You need driver's ed. So all of these are different types of waivers that are available to you. And usually the basic requirements are going to be that bachelor's degree and the CBEST. And then there's other certain requirements, which we'll go over in just a second. So the application materials. So one of the things you have to understand about a waiver is sometimes we get people who will come in and they walk in over the counter and they say, "Hi, I want a waiver." Okay, that's nice, but it's an employer-driven document. So the document has to be started by the employer because there's a lot of different requirements and things that the employer has to do to be able to hire this person in this assignment. So you must fill out a application, and you must indicate the employee agency's information in the file box. That's that little box at the top, which means the employer's name, email, all of that information. Now, the commission is very, very strict about the timelines, the time frames. So they have basically said that if they have received a request within 90 days, so let's say you dated it January 1st, if you send it to them within 90 days after that date, and they meet the minimum requirements, that they will grant that document. Anything that's after the 90 days, they won't even look at it. They will immediately reject it back to you and ask you to resubmit the document with a revised issuance date. So let's talk about the specific requirements. So the thing about waivers, it's not the traditional 41-4. It's actually a waiver form. It's called a WV1. So the variable term waiver form, it's got a lot of words on it, a lot of different places that you need to check box and all that. You want to fill out that form. You will have to print it out. They don't currently have it available as a web fill, so you will have to complete it online. You will have to provide some sort of proof of fingerprints. So we always say the certificate of clearance is the best option, or if they have some other CTC issued document like a sub permit, something like that, that would be acceptable as well. You do have to have those transcripts showing the bachelor's degree or higher. Verification of basic skills, unless you're actually applying for a basic skills waiver. Now, this is where it's, that public notice comes in. Public notice or board approval, you must complete that. You must prove it or bring it, and that's going to be even your first time or a subsequent waiver. And then in terms of recruitment, if it is a low incidence, now that's single subject, multiple subject, EL, admin, you do have to prove that you actually recruited for that position. If it's one of the high incidence areas, special ed, one of those areas, do not have to submit proof of recruitment. And then of course the fee. So there are some exceptions to that fee. Now, and I also added temporary county certificate depending on if you're going to be submitting that through your county. Most of the counties do want that temporary. That's what allows that person to work while we're waiting for them to complete the requirements. So let's talk about that fee. So one of the nice things about the waivers is if somebody holds a regular credential, a non-emergency credential, there is no fee for a waiver. So if they have a single subject and you're now applying for a bilingual waiver, you do not have to submit a fee for that. So there are some exceptions, right? It has the PIP, the STIP, the designated subjects, child development, or sub permits. Those don't work. But anything that's a full non-emergency credential, they don't have to submit the fee, which is great. One of the things that you will have to identify on the form is the ed code that you're actually waiving. This is on page 33 of the current waiver handbook. So you do have to identify which area you are actually waiving. So like, for example, if you are waiving that EL for the designated subjects. You can see it's at the bottom here. It is the, let me find it, it's here. So this one here is a certificate of credential to provide instruction to limited English proficient students. So you would use this one here. So depending on what you're actually waiving, you do have to identify the specific ed code that you want on the form. So the commission requires that. All right. Subsequent application materials. I won't go into too much detail on this. Basically, it's all the same things that you require for a first time. One of the nice things is if it is a renewal, you do not have to recruit, obviously prove that you recruited because you already did that last time. And then you do have to show progress though. You have to provide something showing that that they have made some progress. Maybe they've been admitted to a program. Whatever they've done, you must submit it to get it approved. All right, I can see that I'm getting close on time here, so I kind of want to quickly go through some of these charts. The charts are in the waiver handbook, which is on the SIG, and it goes into some detail about when are they going to grant it and when would they say no. So there's different types. So you can see here, this one is specifically for the CBEST waiver. Here are the requirements to actually grant the document, and here are the things that would be a denial. So if they say that they have a single subject in math or science and they failed math, there you go, you're done. There's not going to be an option for you. It is going to be a denial. Same thing for the subsequent. It kind of talks in detail about what they would be doing to grant it, and then if it would be denied. And you can see there that there actually is an option for a third CBEST waiver, but there are very specific requirements to qualify for that. Here's the program waiver chart that talks about, what is it that's going to be a grant and what will be a denial. And then the same thing here for if you're doing both. Let's say they don't have CBEST and they don't have a program, you're actually going to be waiving both of those things. Here are the requirements for it to be granted or denied. And then I have one more, the experience waiver. So these again, if they're experienced, so this is maybe that admin that doesn't quite have enough units, or excuse me, years of experience. These are the requirements and what would qualify them, and if they're going to qualify to get a renewal. So I want to quickly talk about the temporary county certificate. So this document is what the county can use to allow somebody to work while we're waiting for the commission to grant that document. As you know, it can take 3 to 4 months sometimes for a document to be granted. You can get a temporary county certificate on waivers. You do need to work with your county to get that approved. We are required to have, the person must have a certificate of clearance or another valid document for us to be able to issue a TCC by ed code. All right, and then in terms of the period of validity, basically it's always going to be 1 year, no more than 1 year. A lot of times it's going to be usually June, whatever your last day of school is. A lot of times in San Diego, the districts will put June 30th as the final date, just to give it a little bit more leeway in case the teachers are continuing to work beyond those couple of days at the end of the school year. It also helps with payroll, so you don't have any problems with holds on pay. So, and then in terms of the short-term waiver, which I'm going to talk about now, is that it is always going to be the effective date less than 1 semester. All right. Here's a couple just general reminders about what the requirements are. You do not need the 41-4. It is its own document as a waiver. Can't go beyond the 3 months. Must have a certificate of clearance, and then you need to submit all the documentation when you do that. And then I only have about 3 more slides and I have 3 minutes, so yay. All right, so let me talk real quickly about short-term waivers. Short-term waivers are a local option. That means basically it's not a document that you receive from the Commission on Teacher Credentialing. It is an agreement that you do with your county office of ed. It is only for unanticipated, like immediate short-term issues that came up. So for example, you have somebody, you're at the end of your let's say you're in May or in April, and your teacher leaves all of a sudden, and you need somebody to cover that assignment. You don't have anybody. As long as they have a valid credential, you can use a short-term waiver to cover that opening. So they must hold a teaching credential based on a bachelor's degree and a teacher prep program, including student teaching, and you have to have consent of the teacher to cover this assignment. It is a one-time thing. It can be issued one time to any one teacher and only once for any one specific class, and it has to be for 1 semester or less. So it's very, very, very specific. So you don't see a lot of these. I think in San Diego, we do maybe 1 or 2 a year. So it's very seldom that we use that. You would be submitting, there is an actual document in the waiver handbook, and you would submit that to the County Office of Education. We would be the ones that would approve it, and then we do report that to the commission during the assignment monitoring each year. So you will never receive a document. It's just to cover that person in the assignment while you're trying to, get through the rest of the school year. And then, so here's basically, and I put this picture in here because I thought it was very funny. I've been doing credentialing for about 25 years. And back in the day, we used to go through the commission's offices, and they literally, this is what their offices looked like, with stacks of documents. It was crazy I don't think it's like that anymore, but this is what it looked like. So I specifically put this picture there because I thought it was funny. So these are the things that you'd have to do for that short-term waiver. And then I just put out the resources. So there is specifically a waiver email at the commission. You can reach out to them if you have specific questions, but you always want to start with your county. There is a waiver handbook on the SIG, and then there are some specific waiver forms that you can find on the SIG as well. And I think that is it.
Thank you so much, Casey. That was awesome. As always, we appreciate you. So we are going to take a 3 to 5 minute break, and we will be back with Monica from San Diego County on local assignment options. So Monica, go ahead and you can start your share, and then we'll be back in a couple minutes. Thank you.
Casey, can you see my screen okay?
You're on the notes, switch it up there, Monica.
Mm. And
There you go. And then start presentation mode. No,
No, it's still the presenter. Maybe stop sharing. That's what seems to
did.
work,
I did. Do
except
it again.
I can still see it.
Let's
So I'm
see.
saying stop share and then
Stop share. Try again.
and then go to the presentation mode down at the bottom.
I don't see what you see because I only have one screen.
On the
Let's-
bottom right side where there's that slider, right next to that one,
Yep,
try that.
You see both screens?
try
No,
hitting
we're
it
only
again.
seeing the other.
Presenter view?
Try hitting that one that Craig said again on the bottom, the big.
Stop sharing again.
No worries, if not, I can share my screen.
Any luck?
no, we're still seeing the PowerPoint with your slides to the left.
I'll hide presenter view. I don't know what else to do.
Oh,
There you
that
go.
worked.
I just won't see my notes then. I only have one screen. It's all good. I got this.
You sure? Okay, perfect. Okay, we will go ahead and get started with local assignment options. We have Monica Robinson presenting from San Diego County. And after this, keep continuing to type your questions and we will do a Q&A session. Thank you, Monica.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'm Monica Robinson again with the County Office of Ed, and we're going to be talking about local assignment options. So local assignment options, what are they? And have you heard an acronym for it? Yes, you have, LAOs. So local assignment options are something that an employer can do to allow some wiggle room flexibility while trying to obtain a fully authorized individual in the assignment. So this is at the discretion of the employer, the district, the charter, NPS, whoever it may be. It's not something that they have to do, but it's an option. So we have a lot of people that say, but my district doesn't want to do an LAO for my assignment. And we don't get involved with employment, but it is available. So education code and the Title V regulations do provide this as an option, like I said, but it's the discretion of the employer on whether or not they want someone with the full authorization, because this can affect things such as ESSA and different things that, you know, make them not fully qualified. The old terms, not highly qualified. Now it's different terminology, but it is up to the employer. So the local assignment options are on the responsibility of the employer, but they also have to be reported out so that it's captured in different things. So as far as the commission is going to collect the local assignment option data for the assignment monitoring that's captured in CalSAS through CalPADS. And if somebody asks the commission information about a local assignment option, they're going to refer that employer, that district back to their monitoring authority, their own county office of ed. So for us, we are the monitoring authority for San Diego County. So any of our districts, charters, et cetera, they're going to be asking us on, hey, is this appropriate? What do I need to do? Do you have a template you can share with me? How do I report it in CalPads and so on and so forth? So CalPads is triggered into CalSAS, which is not in this workshop, but this is where you're going to be documenting this information so that you don't have people that are showing up flagged as misassigned. So again, the county office is a monitoring authority of the particular place that you're at. They will have the final say, and then the commission. And then as the authority, they will also be collecting the data for the assignment monitoring to be able to remedy any challenges, credential misassignments that come up if the educator's not properly assigned. And then the local education agency, such as a district, everything else they're going to be doing, they're going to be providing the form, they're going to be doing the evaluation on whether the person is qualified, looking at the units and all of that. So we are your partners and we trust you. So we're not going to be like, okay, let me see the transcript to make sure that they have the 12 units based on that ed code or such and such. We're not going to ask you that because we trust you. But if you are audited and they want to see the evidence on how that person is able to do that, then at that point, and maybe your county office wants to see the evidence. Again, we don't, we just are too big of a county to be looking at the evidence. So when is the local assignment option? Local assignment option an option? So you can do it for general education settings. You can also do it for like, let's say, speech. There's different options that can be used, not just teaching. And it's only for individuals who hold a credential based on a bachelor's degree and student teaching for the teaching parts. But there's so many different ed codes. And we're going to talk about the most common ones used. But this does exclude somebody that has an intern credential. I just want to be very clear. If someone has an intern, an emergency, a waiver, a CTE, or an adult ed document, this is not an option for you. You will not qualify for a local assignment option. What is required for the local assignment options? There are a few things. It's always going to be teacher consent. So they have to be stating that they're okay to be teaching outside their credential, and they have to sign on it. And then the board authorization, some of these local assignment options do require that they go to the board to be approved. And then subject matter expertise, some of these require either a panel that oversees if the person is truly qualified, or it could be based on units and such that they're an expert. So the teacher consent, again, they're going to be stating that they are okay, that they consent to teaching outside of their area. This document is going to be kept on file with the employer, and the educator has to do this annually. So it's not something that is a blanket, hey, I started in 1990 and I'm still teaching 30-something years down the line with the same LAO. No, you have to do it every single year. And if your assignment changes and you're on the local assignment option for teaching something else, then it has to be done for that appropriate subject. So it has to be done annually, and then it has to be provided to the monitoring authority, as well as it has to be reported in the system and all of those things. They should be kept on file, And then in the CalPAT should be noted as using a local assignment option. So the ones that need to go to the board, not all of them require board action, but some of them do require that they go to the board. So the board action should be taken prior to the educator's assignment. So what happens is that the beginning of the school year or prior to the school year starting, you should be looking at your educators, who is using a local assignment option, and do they need to be taken to the board? Maybe their assignment changed and they don't need the local assignment option anymore. So you have to be looking at those assignments to know if you need to take them to the board. But what happens a lot is that they're not taken to the board. They're not even done. The teacher hasn't consented again to the same assignment, and maybe mid-year they're done and then submitted because monitoring started. So that's not what you want to do, because guess what? It's considered a corrected misassignment if it's done after the fact. So just a note there. So the usage of the LAO should be acknowledged as public record. So everyone is entitled to know that the teacher isn't fully authorized for the assignment, but is teaching on a local assignment option. And that's where data quest and all those things come up with giving us information on whether or not a person is fully authorized. So this board approval needs to be given. Again, I will reiterate each year. And if the assignment changes during the school year, you want to do this yearly. Subject matter expertise. Some of the local assignment options, not all, require that the person is an expert in their field. And this can be proven by courses, like I mentioned earlier, college courses. And it can also be expertise in, maybe they were a data programmer or something, artist at Disney for so many years. So they can have different things. And the Commission on Teacher Credentialing has no purview over the local assignment options. So this is something that the employer has to do their due diligence on to ensure that the person is appropriately qualified and authorized based on the LAO that they're going to be placed on. So we're going to talk about only the ones that are the most common used ones. Title 58005B is one that is used for classes that are that a credential doesn't exist for, that are outside of a broad subject area. So these are electives, and typically like student government, life skills, conflict management, some online courses. These are what we're talking about, that there's not a credential for student government. There's not a single subject for conflict management or life skills, those type of classes. So these are classes that are taught in a departmentalized setting. So different periods, and they are electives, and it can be any grade level, middle school, high school. It's K through 12. The teacher does have to have the consent. And for this particular one, there is not a board authorization. And then the subject matter expertise is pretty much that the teacher holds a teaching credential based on a bachelor's degree in student teaching. And possibly this teacher has been teaching life skills for so many years, and so on and so forth. The next one that is very popular statewide is Ed Code 44865. So this is for someone who has a full credential based on bachelor's in student teaching that is teaching in an alternative setting. Anything from home hospital class, from community day school, juvenile hall, those type of settings. This is for that. This is going to allow that fully credentialed individual whether they have a multiple subject, whether they have a single subject, to teach every single area if need be, or to teach other areas that they're not authorized in. So a lot of our court school teachers here at the county and our community day school teachers, let's say they have a single subject in health, let's just say, but they're teaching math and English and all the core areas, they're able to do that based on Ed Code 44865. And it can be any content, and it can be K through 12. And the teacher does, again, have to consent every year. And they do not need to take this to the board. So all that's required is I consent to teach outside my area, whatever it is. And then sign date and do that every year. And then just a reminder, the folks that are not fully able to qualify for this route, that are not eligible because they don't have the bachelor's in student teaching, are the intern, waiver, the PIPs, the STIPs, and the CTE document holders. Ed Code 44256B. So this is for somebody that is going to be an educator who's going to be in a self-contained setting to teach in departmentalized courses up to the 8th grade. So this teacher can teach, this elementary ed teacher can teach in as many classes that they need to in a different subject area, as long as they have either 12 lower division units or 6 upper division units at a regionally accredited college or university and the subject that they're going to be teaching. So let's say I have a multiple subject credential and I have 6 upper division units in English. So I can be placed on 44256B to teach English all day long in a departmentalized setting, as long as I have those units. So I could have 12 semester units, or I could have 6 upper division units, and I would be legal per the CTC to teach English. So this one does require that it goes to the board, and it's to teach in grade levels 8 and below, so typical middle school setting. And the subject matter expertise are the units and the content area. And again, teacher consent, as the rest of them need to be done yearly. Ed Code 44258.7B. This is for a person who has a single subject teaching credential that is going to be doing one period of coaching, one period of a competitive sport for the physical education. So what we see for this is that the teacher maybe has a single subject, let's say in math, and they teach all their other periods in their area, math and math only. And then that last period of the day, they are using 44258.7B to teach, to coach a sport and for the PE credit for that last period of the day. So this is a person that is also a full-time employee, so important note, and that they also have to have the 20 hours of the first aid instruction appropriate for the specific sport that they are coaching, that they are teaching. So for this, again, consent is required just like the rest of them, and it should only be done for one period and one period only. So if you're seeing that somebody is using 44258.7B for more than one period of, in the day of PE, that is not an appropriate assignment. It can only be used for one period. And it does have to go to the board, and they, the subject matter expertise is that they have just the full credential, the single subject, and that they have the 20 hours first aid in the specific sport. 44258.7C D. This is also known as a COA. So again, this is the world of acronyms. And if you hear, oh, that person is being placed on a COA, the first thing that comes to my mind is that it's an elective. A COA is for electives only. So that is how I remember that. And the way to get this person authorized is not necessarily through units. So this person can have any teaching credential, elementary or single subject, and they're going to be able to teach in a departmentalized setting. And they're going to be teaching, like I said, an elective, a course that is not English, math, science, or social studies. And it can be any grade level, K through 12. They do need, again, like everything else, a teacher consent. And then it does need to be taken to the board. And then the subject matter component of this is that a committee is made by the school district, the employer, the LEA, of an equal amount of teachers, selected by teachers, and school administrators selected by school administrators to determine if this person is a subject matter expert. And how are they a subject matter expert? Because they, were an artist for Disney for 20 years, or however, that's something that you guys determine. But there are rules and such that indicate what, how, and what you need to do for the COA. So that one does not require units. 44258.3. This is another ed code that is commonly used throughout the state. It allows educators to teach in a departmentalized setting in any content in grades K through 12 outside of their area. So the governing board uses either specific policies and procedures to verify that the educator has knowledge in the subject area that they're going to be teaching in. And they use subject matter specialists in developing like a competency to see if they are competent in their subject that they're going to be teaching in. So this is for departmentalized setting, any content. It can be K through 12. Teacher consent, again, is needed. This one does go to the board. Ed code 44263. So this is for any teaching credential holder, and this will allow them to teach outside of their authorization area and any content. So if they're going to be teaching in a departmentalized setting, which is different periods throughout the day to different students, they would need 18 lower semester units or 9 upper division units from a regionally accredited college or university and the subject that they're going to be teaching. So this is someone that's not quite qualified for a supplemental authorization or a full authorization yet. If they have 18 units, they're close to that 20 or close to that 24, that major, but they're not quite there yet. For self-contained setting, this is where somebody's teaching the same students all day. This is a little bit different. It's 60 semester hours equally distributed among the 10 diversified major areas. So that are set forth in the section 44314 of the ed code. So these are like English, math, science. It's kind of like a worksheet that you can go through. And then if they have the 60 semester hours in among the 10 areas, and they're able to do this. So does this need board authorization? Yes, and they are being verified as some type of subject matter expertise, whether it's the 18, the 9 upper division, or the 60 units. For ed code 44258.2, this is for somebody that holds a single subject credential. typically your secondary ed, and it will allow them to teach in a departmentalized setting. This is typically used to teach any content in the middle school class level because it's for grade 5 through 8. And this is again based on units. So they can have 12 semester units or 6 upper division units from a regionally accredited college or university in the subject area that they're going to be teaching outside of their area. Again, this needs teacher consent. It does need to go to the board, and then the units, either the 12 or the 6, is what is their subject matter expertise. So let's go to the questions here that are the most frequently asked questions, at least for me. Is it true that LAOs are for general education assignments only? So according to CTC, yes, local assignment options, LAOs, cannot be used for special programs such as special education, CTE, or even to cover an English learner assignment. So that would require an emergency CLAD or a waiver for CCSD, depending on the content being taught, if it were a CTE class. So yes, these are typically and are for general education assignments only. Okay, I'm using an LAO for an educator. Is this considered to be an appropriate assignment? So according to CTC and according to your monitoring authority, you're legal if you use a local assignment option. The educator is properly assigned if they use an ed code option. And if it's reported correctly in CalPADS, then there will not result in a misassignment in CalSAS. But important note, according to ESSA, every Student Succeeds Act, the educator is considered out of field if you use a local assignment option, except Title 58005B. So what happens is we tell you guys as your monitoring authority that you're good based on using an ed code option, committee on assignment, 44865, any of those that we talked about, and there's even more. But we tell you that you're good and you're legal and nothing flags as a misassignment because you did these before the school year and all of the things, and you had the teacher consent and all of that. But then it comes around that the dashboards come up and that you get the results and you see that you still get dinged because according to ESSA, the educator is considered to be out of field. So that's why some local employing agencies do not use LAOs. So just so you know that, it'll still get dinged. Is it true that the governing board approval process is required every school year? Or can the educator continue to be assigned if they have done it once when they first started, when they were first hired? So according to the commission, the board approval is required to be done annually. And we typically advise our districts and LEAs to do it prior to the school year starting, especially if you have to take it to the board. And then, does an LAO require teacher consent? So according to the CTC, yes, the educator must have a signed teacher consent form on file. And it can't be one from the first year that they started. And if their assignment changed for another subject, they have to do one for that subject as well. So this is annual. If a board authorization for an LAO was issued after census date, is this considered a misassignment in CalSAS? So according to CTC, yes, it's considered a corrected misassignment, as I mentioned earlier. So it's important that you do these prior to census date because it will show up as a corrected misassignment. So verify the criteria that you're going to be using for each educator. Review the assignments, what each educator is going to be teaching. Make sure they hold the valid appropriate credential for their assignment. And if they don't, then take action on what ed code option LAO you're going to be using for them. And then if the governing board action is necessary, include a copy of the agenda in which the board action was taken. Here is for services question. I have an opening for a speech language pathologist. Is it true that I can use an ed code option LAO? They really don't need to have a California credential. Is that true? So according to the CTC, yes, Ed Code 44831 will allow a local employing agency to employ somebody that has a master's degree in communicative disorders and a valid speech language pathology audiology license in the state of California, as well as a certificate of clearance on file with the CTC that will make them legal under 44831 to provide speech language services. So they don't need to get the 5-year credential. They don't need to apply for it if they qualify based on this criteria. Okay, I'm lost. Who can give me guidance? I don't know what to do. So all local assignment options should go through your monitoring authority. So you want to be asking your county office of ed if you need approval, guidance, help. It's going to show up on everything. So go to them and see if you're doing things properly. Make sure you have backup if it's required. Some will ask for it. So let me see the transcripts. How did they qualify? Let me see your committee stuff and who's on your committee. So even your legal department may ask for it. So just so that you know that. You can't just like, hey, everybody's on this local assignment option and we're good to go. So CTC can give you guidance and can direct you to certain ed code, but they're not going to have purview over what you're doing. They'll refer you back to your county office. If you're using for CTE assignment, be aware that there's not a lot of ed codes that do cover CTE assignments, but funding can be affected, and general education assignments should be reported differently than CTE assignments. So what is truly the class? So I have some option resources, LAO resources for you. This is the most commonly used LAO options for teaching in California public schools. So the ones that I talked about were the ones that we see the most. And then these here also will give you the legal citation as well as what the base credential needs to be, what the content needs to be, whether it's knowledge, skills, units. Is it 60 units? Is it 12 units? Is it 18 units, all of those things. And then it'll tell you what the setting is, the grade level, and what content it could be, and whether or not board action is required. So this is just like a cheat sheet. I tell people to put this on their desktop. And then it also tells you that they have to have the full teaching credential and the consent and what have you. So everything is here in one little snapshot. I also have here a link for California legislative information so that bills and ed code and whatnot can be looked at as well. Here are the ed code regulations and California Code of Regulations, Title V. And then the Commission on Teacher Credentialing has a common local assignment options for educator assignments in California public schools, a really good resource there. And as well as assignment resources, here's a link. And that's a great resource for any and all information on ed code options. So that concludes my presentation for today. I know we went fast and it's a lot of information, but thank you for attending and we'll see you at the Q&A later.
Thank you, Monica. Great presentation. So as of right now, we have 85 questions. You can keep them coming. Anything that we don't answer today, we will try to get into the last session. So we have about 4 minutes, and at 11 o'clock, we'll start with the Q&A. Okay, we'll go ahead and get started. So thank you again for joining us for the Q&A portion. As of right now, there are now 88 questions. So Stephanie's going to be reading the questions, and then any one of us can answer the questions. So please bear with us if we don't know the answer to a question. You know, you're welcome to email the commission or the waivers unit. We'll kind of direct you in that direction. So we will do our best. Okay, Steph, take it away.
All right, so for the first couple questions are meant towards the PIPs and the STIPs. So the first question is, how would a teacher qualify for an ed specialist when they have a multiple subject?
Oh, fantastic. So, so sorry again, I'm getting over a bug. So if they have that ed specialist preliminary or clear and they have not held a STIP, you can do a short-term staff permit for them, for that school year. So that way they can be in that position. Now, if they've already held a short-term staff permit, the only other possible option would be to speak with a program and see if they could potentially be intern eligible to be in the assignment.
Next question is, when you say a grade of C or better, would a grade of C minus qualify?
So in some instances, the C- has qualified. In other instances, I've received kickback letters from CTC. So you can try it. I always say it doesn't hurt to try, just have a backup option in case it does not work out.
Where can the information about semester units be found?
Oh, so for the converter, let me put that link in the chat box for you. Give me 1 second. All right, in the chat box, I put a link to the unit converter for you.
Next question is, are the different units requirements for a PIP listed somewhere to reference?
I'm so sorry, can you repeat that question?
Are the different units requirements for a PIP listed somewhere to reference?
Yes, so everything is listed on the leaflet itself. So I'll put that in the chat box. And then in addition, it's also listed on the evaluation worksheet.
If a PIP is granted and it expires, but then the candidate meets subject matter, can we apply for a STIP?
Absolutely. If the candidate has not held a STIP previously, you can absolutely apply for the short-term staff permit. It's important to note that both the PIP and the STIP are once in a lifetime. So once you use those options are now gone.
So how do we get the early childhood special education added to a special ed credential while they enroll in a program if no PIP? Is waiver the option, or can we use a limited assignment permit for the early childhood special education?
All right, well, that also sounds like a question for Monica, and for Casey, but for this, it just depends where they're at. Did the question state they have a credential?
No.
No. So if you're applying for an emergency permit, so for instance, with the PIP, you do have to have that with another subject area, but with the STIP, you can apply for that on its own. So it really just depends what the transcript state of that candidate.
Got it. For a PIP or a STIP, is it not the case that the coursework needs to be specifically BA degree applicable?
That's correct, yes. It cannot be non-remedial.
Are there alternatives to CBEST for BSR?
Yes, there are. So you can do coursework evaluation for English and math. And then you can also use qualifying SAT or ACT scores if that applicant has that information. There's about 8 different options that you can utilize for someone to meet basic skills.
And what is the basic skills requirement?
So the basic skills requirement is basically competency in reading, writing, and mathematics. There is a leaflet on the CTC website that one can use that basically outlines how someone can meet the basic skills. So as I think it was Casey that stated, there could be new legislation coming down where anyone with the BA automatically meets basic skills. But until then, we do have to have candidates meet basic skills for the PIPs and the STIPs.
And for the agenda for our public notice, is the PIP application brought to the board with redaction of their social security numbers, or how is this typically done?
So it's not the application, it's simply a statement on the agenda under the action item that states their name, the assignment, grade levels, that they'll be employed on the basis of a PIP. Please do not bring the entire application to the board, but it's really just a statement as an action item, and make sure it's an action item. If it appears on the consent portion of the agenda, the commission will not accept that, and then you'll have to retake it to the board.
Where can I find the SIG?
So the credential information guide, if you go to the CTC website, and then I believe there's a tab for employers or employment only, something along those lines, there is a link directly to the SIG. If you do not have access, contact your county office of education so that way they can provide you the username and password, because that is a great place for all the resources, and it has a variety of leaflets that provides you all the information you may need.
And does the declaration of need have to be on the file approved prior to the PIP?
It's not for the PIP or STIP. So the declaration of need is for your GLAPs or your general education limited assignment permits, your CLAP, your special education ones as well. It's also for instance, your emergency librarian, that type of thing. So you don't need the DON on file for the PIP or STIP.
I am a state school. Do I need to have a DON on file with CTC? We do STIPs, PIPs, and waivers.
If you are doing STIPs and PIPs and waivers, those do not fall under the DON. So you would not need those for those applications.
How can a teacher earn a single subject when they hold an ed specialist credential? We are looking to hire an ASL teacher who holds an ed specialist credential in deaf and hard of hearing.
That's fantastic. So this individual would need to enroll in a single subject credentialing program.
Are the requirements for public notice for employees who are employed via a PIP new, or have these always existed?
No, has been in place. Hang on one second. I'm so sorry. Like I said, I'm getting over a bug. So sorry. I do apologize. So for the PIPs, I don't believe it's a requirement for the PIPs, but it is a requirement for the short-term staff permits and then also for the waivers as well. But it's not new, it is in the leaflet. So make sure before you complete any applications, like I said, I always recommend pulling up the leaflets from the SIG just to make sure, especially if you're new, you are following all the steps that are required for these emergency permits. If you're not necessarily new, you are more of a senior credential analyst, I still recommend pulling them up once in a while and make sure nothing has changed. But you absolutely want to use these resources that are available to you.
Next question. Is it possible to get a copy of the letter of that checklist?
Oh, that is listed on the SIG. I can put the link in the chat box if you would like. Give me 1 second. So for the SIG, you do need to have the username and password as well, but that is in the chat box.
Amy, real quick, make sure that that goes to everyone and not just hosts and panelists.
It did, yes. It went to
Okay.
everyone.
Thank you.
Does the commission only accept wet signatures and blue ink, or is this a requirement specific to the PIP?
No. So the commission has put out a, I believe it was a CIA or a coded that states what signatures are authorized, and it's the blue ink signature, or it's Adobe Sign or DocuSign.
How much more time can we request for a STIP extension?
So there is no such thing as a STIP extension. Essentially, you can request it to go past the June 30th or end of school date. I also put June 30th, or my districts do as well for that end date. But if you need it to go farther, you do need to show cause. So for instance, does your school track go longer? Do you have summer school? Is that person working summer school? Things of that nature.
DocuSign is accepted. What about informed K-12 signatures? These are verified and sent through a link.
At this time, I believe the commission is not accepting those yet. But if anyone else has any information on that, please jump in.
Can we backdate PIP's 90-day rule, or do we have to wait for board approval before the individual can start in the teaching assignment?
So it is recommended that the board does approve the assignment prior to the issuance date. However, I know there have been instances where the PIP is backdated prior to the board approval, but it's not recommended.
Can you briefly explain the main difference between a PIP and a STIP?
So one of the main differences is that if subject matter competency has been met either by the CSETs or the bachelor's degree or a master's degree, you can only apply for the short-term staff permit. That's one of the huge pieces between the two. You no longer can apply for that provisional internship permit or PIP. So for instance, when I meet with candidates or I'm meeting with districts and their potential candidates, we outline or we try to outline about a 2 to 3 year plan for this individual, not only to remain in education and for the district to continue employing them, but so that way they make sure they make progress. So, so sorry. So that's one of the main differences. The other piece is that The PIP is really for an immediate staffing need, whereas the STIP is for an acute staffing need. But in both instances, you weren't able to find a fully credentialed teacher or someone who can hold the intern credential.
Next question is 10 semester units in each of the categories, coursework evaluation.
So it's in 4 of the categories. And like I said, if you cannot meet 10 semester units in 4 of the categories, for that 4th category, you can basically split it up into 2 additional categories. And it doesn't have to be split even 50-50. You could do 3 units and 7 units, whatever the case may be, into other categories.
For an online recommendation for application forms, aren't only DocuSign or Adobe Sign signatures accepted? In other words, we can't have someone sign in blue ink and scan that for the online application. I thought a blue ink signature only worked for paper applications, so clarify, please.
No, so a lot of my districts actually use Blue Ink signatures. They do not use Adobe Sign or DocuSign, and scanning those documents in are absolutely accepted by CTC.
Can we use an experiential credit, EC credit for a STIP or PIP? The EC grade was taken at a non-accredited college, but was transferred over to Purdue Global, and Purdue gave credit toward the BA degree.
That is a very interesting question. So as Purdue gave credit, you might be able to use it. However, because it wasn't originally from an accredited school, if the CTC recognizes the school that it's from and that they see that it's not an accredited school, they could essentially kick that application back and request another class in its place.
So the blue ink is your preference, not mandatory.
No. So it is mandatory. You either have to use per CTC, Blue Ink, Adobe Sign, or DocuSign.
How do we choose to put someone on a PIP versus a STIP?
So it's really following the acute staffing need. Hang on one second. So sorry. It's really seeing what type of staffing need you have, and going from there. So is it an acute staffing need? Is it an immediate staffing need? What is the cause of, why you're needing to fill this position?
If he has a STIP that is expiring and never had a PIP, can I recommend a PIP if the educator needs time to complete CTC recommended requirements and will not be recommended for an intern by their program?
So by requirements, do you mean the CSETs or subject matter competency? If they still need to meet that, then yes, you can apply for a PIP. If they've met subject matter competency, then unfortunately, no, you cannot apply for a PIP.
I have someone on a STIP from January to the end of the school year who has completed all the requirements except the RECA. They will be taking it over the summer, but is not currently enrolled in a university. Can they file for a PIP?
They cannot. If they've met subject matter competency, they're unfortunately ineligible for the PIP.
How do you set up or create online submissions?
You need to work with your county office.
Also, if your district or charter does not appear under the employment restrictions dropdown, send an email to CTC with your CDS code to get it added, is what someone else said.
Okay, perfect.
Can we go over the restriction changes?
Absolutely. So what exactly do you have a question about restriction changes? So essentially, when you're filling out the employment restriction on an online application, you click new. I typically have my school district search by the school district and then type in their name. That's the fastest way for them to find their information. I know others might know their code by heart. We do not. So we always search by the school district. That only takes a few seconds. If you're doing a paper app, make sure to fill out section 8 of that application.
We have a teacher who holds an ed specialist moderate to severe credential and has had a CLAP and 2 extensions for early childhood special education. Can they apply for the STIP for the same area? We have a teacher who needs a few more months to complete their early childhood special education requirements.
That is a question for your employing county. I can only state how I would advise my districts in that situation, but I would check in with your employing county.
For PIP and STEP evaluations, what courses can we use for an educator's graduate level transcripts?
So it depends, what's the major? So for instance, if they have a major in English, that automatically qualifies that person for the short-term staff permit.
The next questions are really about waivers. So, can you be on a waiver for BSR then year 2 and 3 to meet the program requirements?
So typically you would actually be on the waiver for all three or both things the first year, but yes, you need to meet the requirements for basic skills first, and then the second year you can go to the program waiver.
Next one is not waiver related, but it's can a substitute teacher create an employee account and apply for a certificate of clearance at the same time? Or will he or she need to wait first for CTC to receive his live scan clearance first and then apply for a certificate of clearance? I'm asking because most of our substitute teachers have to wait for the live scan clearance before they apply for the certificate of clearance. And then after this step, we need to wait for a certificate of clearance to be issued, recommend them for their 30-day sub permit.
I'll answer that since I asked or answered the last one. So they can actually go on and create an account and apply for a certificate of clearance at the same time, but it will not be granted until that LiveScan form has been submitted by the LiveScan agency. Now in San Diego, we actually don't do certificates of clearance for substitute permits because they are granted so fast. However, every county is slightly different. We don't issue TCCs because usually those are granted within about 3 days for the sub permits. So in our opinion, if you apply for a certificate of clearance, it's going to be granted in just a few days, just like a sub permit would. But again, it could be different for your county.
This one is waiver related. If a candidate is almost intern eligible but needs to take CSETs to meet subject matter competency, would a variable term waiver be the best option to hire them on until they take and pass the CSETs? This candidate does not have many units in the subject area.
So the first thing you would want to do is apply or to look to see if they qualified for the STIP or PIP. I mean, that's your first choice, but if they do not meet the requirements because they don't have enough units in the subject area, then yes, a waiver would be an option for you.
Intern credential will expire and educator has not met all the requirements to be recommended for a prelim credential. What are the options? Does a variable term waiver PIP or STIP? We have 2 educators, one in math and one in special ed.
So, the commission, one of their big things is they don't want you to go back down the ladder. Remember, we talked about the ladder and, if you're already here, they don't want you to go backwards. I think during COVID, they made some exceptions, but unfortunately at this time, they are not allowing you to go backwards. So if they've already met the requirements for the intern, it's very unlikely they would qualify for anything below that, which would be a STIP, PIP, or a waiver.
If someone had a waiver years ago in adapted PE and never completed, they held a single subject PE clear. Now they're being hired again for adapted PE. Can I use PE education master units to show progress after issuance along with proof of enrollment in the adapted PE program?
So most likely that would be accepted because it does show that they made progress from that first waiver. If they didn't do anything, then it's unlikely that you would be able to apply unless they can prove that there was some other extenuating circumstances like illness or something like that. But if they did make some progress, then typically the commission will allow a renewal.
I applied for a waiver for someone we want to be a school social worker. She has a PPS in school counseling, but does not have a PPS in school social work. Do you think it will be denied since she has a PPS already?
That's an interesting question. I don't know. I mean, you never know what the commission's going to do. The fact that they meet the qualifications for the school counseling, I mean, it's a possibility.
So if I could jump in real quick.
Yeah,
because
please.
One of my districts just had a very similar application. If you can show she's enrolled in that program, more than likely the commission should grant it, but again, it's the commission, so who knows? But we have had success if you show that they're enrolled in the program and that person's making progress.
Perfect. Next one is I applied for a waiver. Oh, hold on. How can a how can I go from a multiple subject credential to an ed specialist?
Are they asking in terms of the requirements? I mean, basically, the first thing you would try to do is to look to see if they qualify for a STIP, which they should. If they already meet the requirements for the multiple subject, they should be able to qualify for a STIP in ed specialist.
Next question is, where can we find the evaluation worksheets?
So I'm assuming that's for the waivers because I think that was
Waiver.
around the time.
Yeah.
So those waivers are actually on the SIG. If you just type in the word waiver, they all pop up. That's actually, I pulled all of them and that's how I made the screenshots. So they are all available on the SIG.
And then I also sent something to everyone in the chat. It's called SIG, and that has how you can log in, some little tips on there. It's a really good thing. So this is more of a comment, which I think we're all going to be very excited about. And it looks like the waivers handbook and corresponding evaluation worksheets have now been updated as of 5/2024.
That's awesome because I pulled these in April when I created this presentation and I was thinking, wow, they really need to update this. So that's awesome.
Well, I just looked at the evaluation worksheets. They still haven't added the new authorization. So I'm not quite sure what they did, but I'm really glad that they're looking into it. So if a waiver is expired and a candidate meets subject matter, can we apply for a STIP?
Yes, most likely, yes.
Can an applicant who holds a clear PPS credential apply for a waiver?
It depends on what they're applying for, but sure, they could qualify for the waiver depending on what they're actually trying to apply for.
For the admin services waiver, does a pupil service credential count as a prerequisite credential?
Yes, yes, it does.
Can the prerequisite credential for admin waiver be a child development site supervisor permit?
No, unfortunately, the child development permits are not documents that would be eligible for that. Although I may be wrong on that. Is there anyone else in the team? Because if I know that there's certain ones for admin that you can meet the requirements based on, like there's some adult ed ones that
Program.
you can do. So that one I'm not positive about. I think that there are some certain requirements because you do have to have a bachelor's degree to get that level. So that's a possibility, but unfortunately, I don't know off the top of my head.
They can possibly get that old school supervision one that is not the admin one.
Yep. Yeah, the old school child development one. Mm-hmm.
Are psychologists, counselors, and speech teachers required to have an English learner's authorization?
No, they are considered service credentials, so they are not required to have that.
Can I use a waiver if I've used a GLAP in single subject chem because teacher did not take CSETs? No progress, so I can't request a subsequent GLAP?
So you're wanting to get a GLAP in something you've already had a CSET, or excuse me, the STIP in. No, again, that's going backwards. So no, you wouldn't qualify for that.
Sounds like an extension.
Oh, that could be it. If you can apply for an extension if they didn't make progress, but again, usually those extensions are required to have some sort of a, extenuating circumstances as to why they were not able to meet the requirements.
Next question is, do educators that get a multiple or single subject waiver need to be enrolled in a program, or is this primarily for admin waivers?
It is one of the requirements. They do want to show that you have actually enrolled in a program if you are doing the multiple or single subject. If you can at least show that you've attempted, sometimes the programs have closed and they're not accepting applicants. You can get a letter from the university saying at this time, we're not accepting applicants, but they will be eligible in the next round. But yes, they do need to prove something, or they need to submit something showing that they are enrolled.
If the bilingual waiver is issued only one time, then why does the slide refer to a subsequent waiver based on making progress?
So the bilingual waiver being issued once is only for people that have a preliminary or a clear credential. If you have an intern or a STIP or a PIP, you can get renewals on that one. It's the only one that's restricted to 1 year is somebody with a preliminary or a clear credential, because the expectation is that you'll qualify for the emergency clad, or excuse me, the emergency B clad.
Next question is, the difficulty we are having is when the intern is with the program that does not offer a B-clad program and their program is 2 years long. We are doing a waiver and working with the candidate to meet an emergency B-clad requirement. There are times when they have passed all the exams for full BCLAD. Can we still request the emergency for the dual immersion teaching assignment?
Hold on, I need to read that one again. That's a long one. So it's somebody in an intern program that does not offer BCLAD. So that's where you would then apply. If they don't qualify for the emergency, you would then do a waiver. But they do need to try to be making progress toward getting that full, the emergency BCLAD. There are times when they have passed all the exams for the full BCLAD. Can we still request the emergency for the dual immersion? Yes, as far as I know, because the intern does not offer the bilingual program, your only other option would be a waiver or an emergency BCLAD.
We have a SLPA who has the requirements to apply for a master's program in speech, but does not hold the BA degree in communications. They have the 30 BA units required with a different degree, but it is not accepted. Do they qualify for a waiver with the letter of non-acceptance due to space?
You know, I don't know. I'm not sure what the commission would say to that. I think it's always worth a try, but again, you risk the fact that it may get rejected. And so you may want to reach out to the waivers unit and ask them specifically because it is a very specific question.
Next one is a PIP. Can you please clarify how many times can you renew a PIP?
So,
0.
you cannot renew a PIP once in a lifetime. Same with the STIP.
What if a variable term waiver is requested for an PASC for a PPS position in a special education setting? Is it considered low or high incidence?
I believe any of the PPS are considered low incidence, so you would have to prove recruitment.
Does a crosswalk exist that lists these different options, when to use which and what is required?
I'm not sure I understand the question,
I-
but there is a lot of details in the waivers handbook that talks about, you know, when you would, I'm assuming you're probably saying, you know, should we be applying for a waiver versus a STIP versus a PIP? Unfortunately, what we suggest is always start at the highest. Do they qualify for that? No. Okay, go down to the next one, go down to the next one. And where you end up is where they, you know, to determine where they qualify.
For a multiple subject credential teacher who needs to have a pupil personnel waiver, does the fact that they have a credential satisfy the fingerprints, transcripts, BSR portion of the application?
So the fact that they already have a credential means they will not have to submit a fee. We always suggest you submit transcripts showing the bachelor's degree, even though, again, we know that they have it, but the commission, it's so much easier for them if you have and provide that documentation with your application. Now, if you don't submit it, it probably would be fine, but in our county, we always request that you also submit them anyway, because we will still get rejection letters that say, we can't seem to find your bachelor's degree. Can you please resubmit it? So we always figure it's better if you submit everything at the time of submission.
And then where do I find a manual for online guide for permits, not PIP or STIP?
I would think that the SIG is probably your best bet. Really, the other types of permits, it's child development permits, it's substitute permits, emergency permits, but that's about it.
For the waiver fee to be waived, does the credential need to be a clear credential or can it be a preliminary?
It can be a preliminary as well. It's any credential based on a bachelor's degree program in student teaching.
Do CTE preliminary holders require a fee when applying for an EL waiver?
Yes, yes, that is one of the areas that does not qualify for the fee waiver.
Can you share those waiver charts?
Yes, they're actually in the waiver handbook, again on the SIG, and we can also potentially put it in the, we can put the waiver in the chat as well. I can see if I can find that and put it out there for you.
And what are the requirements for a waiver for BCLAD for a PIP and a STIP?
So it is the same requirements as what was listed on the slide. So it basically would be the same thing regardless of what type of base credential they hold. So a lot of, like in San Diego, we'll get it where they have a bachelor's degree, basic skills, but they just haven't met the specific language proficiency. And so usually they are placed on a waiver until they can either go through a university and get the equivalency or take the CSET/CSET or CTEL exams to meet the proficiency for language.
What are the requirements for, did I already ask that? What are the requirements for a waiver for BCLAT? Yes. If a teacher who held a STIP already and does not qualify for a PIP, CTC rejected it because she meets subject matter competency, can she qualify for a waiver?
No, you cannot go backwards.
What is the benefit of using a short-term waiver versus a GLAP?
So a short-term waiver is a one-time thing. It's a one-time document. You don't actually get a document for it. If it is kind of more of an emergency situation where you're just trying to cover that assignment for a short period of time, less than one semester, a short-term waiver might be your best option. However, if you expect that this person may extend that assignment, maybe go into the next year, a GLAP might be a better option because it gives you more time. You can do it for an entire year, and then it can also be renewed. The short-term staff permit is something that the short-term waiver cannot be renewed.
Someone who held a PIP STIP intern and now does not qualify for preliminary, can we place them on a waiver?
No, cannot go backwards.
Can we put someone on a variable term waiver if they've already been on a STIP?
Nope, can't go backwards.
All right, these are local assignment questions now. LAO, can you provide a sample of a teacher consent form?
Yes, we can add a link and add it. I know the presentations were going to be sent to all the educators as well as the links, not the educators. I'm so used to saying the participants of the webinars. So we can include that as well.
Can these be signed at the end of each year, or does it need to be done in the next fiscal year?
So it would need to be done prior to the school year, but if you're doing it at the end of the fiscal year for the new school year, sure, you can do it that way.
Can you elaborate on the 8005B and the difference between 44865 specific to the facilitated classes online component?
So 8005B are the classes that we mentioned, like the student government, the gosh, my brain drew a blank. The student government, the classes that are not within one of the subsumption areas,
Avid.
Avid and such. So that is different than 44865, whereas 44865 is typically used for all classes such as core classes that a credential does exist for, but 44865 can be used for any subject. So it just depends on how it is reported. And then as far as the question about it being reported a certain way for the online, it depends on that too, how the indicator is reported in CalPATS through CalSAS. But any of the ed code options can be used, and as long as they are reported correctly, then they'll just be confirmed that that's what you're using, and then it won't be a flag for CTC or a misassignment if it were done prior to the school year. So pretty much that's it.
Can an adult education teacher teach GED prep courses to adult students under the Ed Code 44865 if they hold a single subject bachelor's degree and has student teaching?
So if they hold a single subject teaching credential, then they can use Ed Code 44865 to teach anything. For adult ed, that is not in the regular CalSAS assignment monitoring. That is going to be outside of that. It's the paper-based auditing, and your monitoring authority should be checking those as well. And a single subject teaching credential holder can teach adult ed, general ed classes.
For LAO supported by Ed Code 44258.79B, does it have to be a specific sport, or can it just be a general PE that they teach?
I believe it has to be a specific sport.
Ed Code 44258.7 CD states any teaching credential can be placed on a committee on assignments other than English, math, science, or single subject. Does this mean a CTE credential holder and PPS holder can be placed on the Ed Code to teach an elective?
So PPS credential holders are not teachers and therefore cannot use Ed Code option to be in a classroom. And then as far as the CTE credential holder, I believe that they cannot use this assignment. I think they have to have a full credential, but I would need to double check on that, but I'm pretty sure that they have to have a full teaching credential based on student teaching and a prep program.
A COA or committee on assignments can be used for Spanish, correct?
COA is for an elective, so yes, it can be used for Spanish elective.
Forgive me as I am new, but are LAOs, Title V's, and teacher consent basically the same thing? Is there any tips on knowing which one to use based on what circumstances?
So the tips, COA is elective only. Title V is 8005B is typically a class that does not exist based on the subsumption single subject areas. And then local assignment option, they're all local assignment options. So local assignment options are for board resolutions, committee on assignment, Title V, Ed Code of any sort. It's just based on what they qualify and if they're using units, if they're using special skills. So it's a matter of what they're going to be doing. Those are the tips I can offer.
Yeah, and then also just to add to that, the teacher consent is usually one of the requirements under the local assignment option. So the local assignment option is like the umbrella, and then you pick which local assignment option you're selecting, and then the teacher consent is one of the requirements to meet, to be able to use that local assignment option.
Is a statement of consent needed for a STIP or a PIP?
Yes, it's different than local assignment option. It's pretty much stating that they're going to make progress and that they're consenting to the assignment.
Can an LAO teacher sign a consent, be the governing board approval agenda item, and then be placed in their personnel file as teacher consent?
Typically, they are placed in the personnel file. Some school districts keep them electronic on a Google. Some of them keep them in a binder. But yes, once the teacher does a teacher consent, they can be placed in their personnel file.
When is census date?
Census date is the first October, first Wednesday in October every year, so it varies. And that is the date that CalPADS captures for Fall 1. So that is what is used for assignment monitoring.
What is the best recommendation to get an emergency permit for an educator that has a North Carolina credential and needs time to process transfer? They have already taken all CSETs.
Well, I would see if their credential from North Carolina transfers over to California. I would make sure they have that certificate of clearance. And then I would issue a TCC as long as they can provide a copy of the completed application packet, assuming this applicant applied on their own. Or if they worked with you, then I would take a copy. I would make sure it's complete. And then as soon as it's mailed off, I would apply, or I'd have that educator fill out the TCC form. And that way they don't need an emergency permit.
Yeah, and I would just add to that, if they haven't completed the requirements to actually receive their out-of-state license yet, they may qualify for some sort of an emergency permit like Amy suggested, like the STIP or PIP, just so that you can get them started while they're completing the requirements in their state.
How do you record an LAO in CalPADS?
So that is going to be in your student information systems, typically where you are. So let's say you're using Synergy or you're using any other student information system. You are going to indicate, there's a indicator there that For example, there's one for middle school that is an indicator for middle school. There's a local assignment option indicator that you're using an ed code option. You would need to select that, and then that is how it would know that. So every system is different, but you're always welcome to reach out either to your county office or to our office or myself, and I can try to assist you.
Would a temporary SLP license meet the criteria as a valid license for 44831?
No, unfortunately not. They have to have the full thing. And it should not be expired. Let's just say that too. It reads valid.
Ed code 44831, does this have to be board approved each year?
44831. Each year. Typically they're every year, so I would say yes. Now, this is for the speech one. So the speech one, it's valid while they hold the certificate of clearance. And this one does not need to be taken to the board. What we do in our county office is we ask for the master's degree transcripts. We ask for the certificate of clearance. And then we ask for a letter on letterhead from the school district indicating what date they are going to start working, as well as the license, the speech language pathology license, the valid license, the non-emergency one, the full one. And we are able to input it into our system for that whole 5 years that they have the certificate of clearance. And then once the certificate of clearance expires, or their valid speech license expires, then they have to provide it again to us. So no, that one does not need to go to the board every year.
Okay. What is the difference between an LAO and a GLAP?
So a GLAP is holding someone accountable that has a full single subject or multiple subject teaching credential. In general education, they're working towards units to ultimately be eligible to obtain the full authorization, either by adding another single subject or even working towards having enough units to get a supplemental or be on an ed code option, because someone may not have units at all. So the advantage of a fully trained teacher is we're not looking for the units. So if I have a single subject in English and you're going to put me in a math class, I'm going to do an app, do the fee, sign a statement of consent, and say that I'm going to work towards earning my math via if I'm going to do the exams, via if I'm going to do the units, and then that makes me accountable to work towards the full authorization or the supplemental.
Can you please clarify if a CTE holder can use a local assignment or not?
According to the CTC, if you look at the chart, they require a full teaching credential, intern, PIP, STIP, those type of credential holders. It's for general education assignment options, assignments only. And as far as we know, there are none for CTE credential holders or to cover EL assignments.
Yeah, I mean, there's some in there that don't specify that it has to be a credential based on, a student teaching in a program. So there are a couple where technically you could allow somebody to be on a local assignment option if they have a CTE credential, but it's really not something that we suggest. And again, it also has to do with the funding. So if they do receive funding, you definitely would not want to be putting them on a local assignment option.
Okay. Does the teacher have to be full-time to be placed on an LAO?
I believe they have to just have the full credential to be eligible for it.
Can a teacher that holds an ed specialist credential be eligible for an LAO for PE competitive sports?
Can a special ed credential holder, you're mixing apples and oranges, so special ed and general ed, no, they can't get one.
Can a temporary California SLP license be used to apply for the clear SLP credential?
My understanding, so we're not talking about 44831 anymore. We're talking about getting their full SLP, and my understanding is that it cannot be temporary. It has to be the full for that as well.
Is there an LAO for a credential preschool SDC teacher to also have TK students?
No, there's not. They can obtain a special education limited assignment permit possibly for that assignment. Or they can get an added authorization in that specialty area through a program.
I have a teacher holding a clear ed specialist. Can they teach life skills under the Title V 80005A? I think they meant B.
So general education classes are not to be confused with special ed settings. So in San Diego County, we say no, and that's from the CTC. So
What
I
is
guess,
it?
oh, sorry, I was just going to add to that. I guess it depends on if that class is general ed or special ed. So if it's general ed, then yes, because that
that's why I said general
yeah,
ed.
the ed specialist credential would allow it because that is based on a program in student teaching, but the class has to be general ed. Just to clarify. Thank you, Monica.
What is the difference in requirements needed for a third and final renewal of special education limited assignment permit versus what is needed to apply for the ed specialist content area to the credential? This is very unclear at the CTC. Thanks.
So this sounds like somebody that is on a limited assignment permit in special education, and they are on the C-LABs and are doing their renewal towards obtaining another specialization area in a different special ed area. So you're either going to be working towards an added authorization with a special ed approved program, or you're going to be going back through a college or university that says, oh, you need XYZ to add extensive support needs. You need XYZ units to add TBI and so on and so forth. So it's not something that they're just going to apply for by themselves. They're ultimately going to need to be recommended by a program. Just themselves doing the units is not going to get them anything. It's going to show progress towards the renewals of the limited assignments. But at the end, when they're done with obtaining those, they have to go back to a program to get recommended, whether it's the bridge, whether it's the added authorization, or whether it's adding a whole nother special ed authorization through a credential program at a college or university.
I have a teacher who has a single subject intern credential in math. He already has a STIP for last year. We want to be able to have him teach science as well. Can we apply him for a waiver for science if he already got a STIP?
So this is a bigger conversation and it should involve the intern program because you want to make sure your employee is meeting the requirements of that intern program and of that intern credential because they do have to teach math for a specific amount of time. And then I would have that conversation first with that candidate or employee's program and then maybe see if that program can add science to the intern credential. But that's where I would start. Excuse me.
Can you be issued STIPs in various single subjects? For example, issued a STIP in social science and then later issued a STIP in math.
So STIP is essentially one and done. You only have one chance to have a STIP once in a lifetime. If you do need multiple subjects by like math and science, then I would see about adding that at the beginning before when you are applying and not waiting down the road when you realize you need another subject area.
If the educator has passed the CSET, does the educator need to have BCLAD as well, or a CSET can stand alone?
So the CSET is subject matter competency. The BCLAD is for the bilingual language. So they're very different. They meet different requirements. If you need someone who is teaching a dual immersion class, then yes, they may need to take the BCLAD or earn the BCLAD, I should say. But CSETs and BCLAD are very separate.
How much time can we request to extend a variable term waiver?
So I'm assuming they mean to renew, because the document is only good for the school year and then it ends at the end of the school year. Now you can extend it or you can renew it up to 2 times as long as they're making progress.
How can you tell if someone has passed CSETs or subject matter?
So you really need to ask them, and hopefully that candidate is very forthright and tells you the truth. If not, if you submit a waiver or a PIP and it gets bounced back, then you're going to learn that they have passed the CSETs. But hopefully they're honest from the get-go.
Does the waiver board need to be board approved before the waiver start date?
Yes, I mean, obviously that's what we would prefer, but sometimes you can backdate it as long as it's still within the 3-month backdating rule.
If a learning handicap credential teacher is moving into an assignment with autism students, what would be the best option while they work on adding an authorization?
I would say CLAP.
We have an educator who's having a hard time passing CBEST. They've been on a waiver for this entire school year, and it doesn't seem like he'll be able to satisfy BSR before the waiver expires. What options do we have to keep him in this assignment for 24-25?
Ooh.
Honestly,
Coursework?
I was gonna say coursework. This person also might want to check out study.com. We have a couple employees throughout this whole county that are using that right now to pass some of their exams, and it seems to be helping. But yeah, coursework, if they can take some summer session classes and finish that CBEST, that would be, or basic skills, that'd be fantastic.
I have a candidate who has an ed specialist credential issued earlier last year, but has a note they must complete or pass RECA in order to clear credential. Given changes to RECA, what are the candidate's options for next year?
Nothing's been
RECA's still
approved. It's still
available.
a requirement. It's
Yeah,
nothing's
RECA
approved yet.
and RECA's still available. So some
Mhm.
people are just not remembering that. So they
Yeah.
have to keep doing what they're doing.
Mhm.
For a variable term waiver question about year 1 for BSR and year 2 and 3 for program, are you supposed to put BSR and program in the first waiver?
Yes.
What happens if you don't and he now has passed BSR and needs variable term waiver for program? Can I still apply for a variable term waiver?
The commission will catch it because they're going to look for that program. And if the person doesn't have it, they're going to kick it back and say, okay, they don't have a program. Are you waiving both? And so at that point, you would actually have both of them listed on the waiver. So they wouldn't be able to do just BSR if they haven't also met the requirement for the program.
We see multiple valid certificate of clearances for the same educator. Why does CTC restrict the issuance of a new, why doesn't CTC restrict the issuance of a new certificate of clearance when there is a valid certificate of clearance?
We ask this all the time.
I'm assuming they just want people's money at this point.
Yeah, I've seen somebody with 5 certificate of clearances.
So have I.
Can you show us where it says blue ink is required for ink signatures? Everything we see says original ink
Yeah.
signature. It does
And-
not specify blue.
Thank you. I'm glad somebody else brought that up because I went and looked at it. And Amy, I think you're not, that's not accurate. I think it can be black as long as
So-
it's original.
Mine was original, it was black, and CTC kicked my application back and they refused. I told them I had the copy here in my office. They refused to accept that and they made that applicant submit a new application in blue ink. I've also received CTC letters for applications that I did not assist with. And the letter actually states in blue ink or Adobe Sign or DocuSign. So that's why I only have blue ink pens in my office now. We have gotten rid of all the black ink pens.
Yeah, so I think it's definitely preferred for sure because I think there are going to be situations where it gets rejected because the commission can't tell.
Okay.
But there is nothing specifically that says it has to be blue in the system. Like when I just looked it up and it doesn't say that.
I believe
Yeah,
CTC
she's
once
trying to
said
help
something
you
like
out.
it's preferred.
Yeah.
Okay, so what are upper level credit?
So those are your higher division courses. So on some transcripts, they might be numbers like 300 to 400. It really depends on the college or university. So you'll want to check that key to see what their numbers are for higher division. Because for instance, some universities start like 0 to 99. Those are remedial classes. whereas 0 to 99 at some institutions are your undergraduate. So it varies per institution, and you really just need to review those transcripts.
If someone meets subject matter or on a STIP in multiple subjects, can they get a PIP in a single subject next school year?
Do they meet subject matter in the single subject area? Because if they do, they won't be able to get a PIP. They would need to essentially be intern eligible for them to be able to teach. So it varies on what their background is. Have they taken the CSETs? What does their transcript state?
We have an educator who would like to remain an intern for a second year. She'd like more time to pass RECA and work on her Cal TPAs. She currently teaches TKK Montessori. Can she remain an intern for another year?
I think it depends what the intern credentialing program says to that. So if she's still taking coursework, chances are she can remain on the intern credential. If she's finished her program, chances are that program is going to submit documentation to CTC to have them end that intern credential. So I would connect with the program itself to see.
To respond further to the question of an intern credential expiring and assessments need to be passed in order to qualify for a preliminary credential. If the educator has not held a STIP, they should qualify for the STIP based on having met subject matter competence for the intern credential.
That is correct, as long as they previously haven't held the STIP. So that's kind of like that third year, either on the intern. You can either do the third year on the intern credential or apply for the STIP. But again, they cannot have previously held the short-term staff permits.
If a teacher who was issued a single subject STIP this year, but next year we need her to teach multiple subjects due to enrollment decline, can we apply for a PIP for her?
It really just depends if she's met subject matter competency. What was her degree major? Has she taken CSETs? Is she enrolled in a credentialing program for multiple subjects? So there are a lot of variables there.
What are the options for someone who have been denied for an intern extension? I was told, having never held a STIP, that we could recommend them for a STIP as the final option. I did hear that this is not an option. What are the options? The employees are in multiple subject teaching assignments.
So if this person's never held a STIP and they're not receiving the third year on the intern, you can apply for the short-term staff permit. If you apply now, though, it is going to expire June 30th. So when is this assignment for? Is this for next school year? Is this to end this school year and backdate it? So if you let me know in the chat, I can answer a little bit better, but.
Well, and as we were talking about, the ladder, we were talking about the ladder and not going backwards on the ladder. This is like the one exception, the one out of all the different choices. This is the one exception where if you had an intern and you did not qualify for that third year, you may qualify for a STIP.
Okay, so we're gonna do one more question, you guys, and then the rest we'll save for our last session.
Can a PPS clear counselor substitute without a 30-day emergency sub-permit under Ed Code 80025.3?
Yes.
They're authorized to substitute with a credential based on a bachelor's and basic
Okay.
skills already, so they can sub, yep.
Okay, so thank you again so much to Amy Writing, Stephanie, Casey, Monica. You guys are awesome. That was a lot of questions and there's still a lot more. So we'll get to those in session 4. And so again, join us next week. Teaching Tuesdays again from 9 to 12. And all of this information all the PowerPoint slides are going out. Templates, recordings will be out after the last session. So those have to go through our PIO office and be put on our YouTube channel and all of that. So please bear with us on everything. Thanks again, everybody. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.